Four people are watching. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Who did that? Did you? Town of Littleton. Yes?
Okay, great. 6:30. Thank you all for coming.
What that means.
Bills and payroll going around? Might as well start with those. Anybody have any questions on the minutes for January 10th, January 27th, February 8th, and March 7th?
Actually, the March 7th ones weren't posted, so it was the three, January 10th, January 28th, and Feb 7th.
Okay. Anybody?
Well, I'm good on the first two. I have a question on the third one for February. So, given the,
Sorry.
Okay.
given our discussion from the last meeting,
I'll have to
specifically
call you later.
around deed restrictions, there was quite a bit of commentary, questions, discussion that wasn't a part of the notes from the February 7th, and so I was wondering if we could add a little bit more detail to that part of the notes.
February,
Feb 7th.
Yeah, February 7 meeting notes, add a little bit more detail around the conversation about deed restrictions.
okay. What else would you like to see there?
Well, specifically,
It was, if the discussion was under one of the particular items, just let me know which one it was, and I'll
Okay.
ask Lucia to.
okay, I can do that, yeah.
Okay.
All right,
That'd be
thank you.
helpful. Yeah.
All right. What about January 10th?
Good,
January 28th?
good,
So do you want to approve those two and take a look at February 7th?
yep.
Anybody else have any problems with the minutes?
Accepted as written and informative and progressive.
Kristen, any issues?
Nope, I'm all set.
Good, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the January 10th and January 28th minutes, and we'll hold off on the February 7th.
So moved.
Still can't see shit.
All in favor? Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Somebody seconded that, I heard it, I know you did.
Town meeting?
So we have visionary sessions on the 5th and 6th. We should probably find out who, if anybody's gonna be there on Friday night or the Saturday.
Unfortunately, I will be attending a funeral for my uncle on Saturday. So.
Okay. Peter, are you planning on attending either one?
I didn't hear what you asked me, I'm sorry.
We have that Littleton Station area, visionary sessions on the 5th and the 6th. Yeah, I'm just trying to see if people are gonna be there to augment Maren and Judy Barrett and everyone else that are gonna be there.
That's this weekend?
That's this Friday and Saturday.
So listening is Friday night, is that correct? And then the visioning's Saturday.
Can't promise. I got a lot going on with lacrosse and kids and stuff like that, but
So you'll
can-
be at both, you'll be at all of them and probably serving breakfast, right?
You can come and serve me breakfast.
I might come I'm not sure which day, but probably Friday, actually. Kristen,
I'm gonna try to make this at least part of the Saturday one.
okay? I'll probably be Friday.
I'll be there.
Okay, let me see what else.
And Cindy was just sharing that it seems to be a lot of interest in the program, so expect the turnout to be good.
And I signed the thing so we can, the contract for the form-based coding. A little late, but I signed it.
Yep, and so we actually have our first date set for that, Thursday, May 16th, over at the fire station. We do a teach-in for that, tell us what is form-based code and what we should be looking at.
So here's some flyers for the date, keep the date.
I'm surprised that you have this. I can't believe that. FBC, I'm already afraid of it. What else? Oh, and that's still me. Board member updates. Anybody want to talk about anything going on in their life?
Sure.
Okay. Why am I surprised? What?
Well,
No, you
Kristen,
can start.
would you like to
If you do.
provide any kind of an update, talk about anything in particular? No?
It's all right, thank you.
I guess you're the only one who's done anything in this.
Oh, I'd like to, if you want to know, what my son has signed his letter of intent to go to St. Anselm's. That picture that shows me is a grumpy old bugger, and I am ecstatic about the fact that he's going, and person taking the picture says, 1, 2, 3, and so I smile. This is a smile, does it look like one? Well, on the 1 and the 2, I'm. So on the 3, I smiled, but he clicked on 1, and I didn't know, I couldn't count that fast, so. I want everyone to know I'm happy as all get out that my son's going there at a great education.
That's great. Congratulations
So,
to your son.
thank you.
Yeah.
I want to get that straight, that I'm happy, happy, happy. That's all. How'd I do?
All right, well, give me a pen. You got an extra pen
Oh,
over there?
yeah.
So real quick on an update, earlier this evening, there was a housing fair held in Stowe, so many communities came together to provide information to residents and anyone else who was interested in affordable housing, so that was informative, and it would be great, Martin and I were chatting about it, it would be great if we could do some kind of information session here in Littleton for our seniors to be able to learn a little bit more about what affordable housing really means, so maybe we can do that in the future. Did want to update on,
And Anna, I just pulled up a picture of the first session. This was
there you
4:30
go.
in the afternoon, and this was the number of people that gathered in Stowe for, just to get information on affordable housing.
I did see one Littleton resident there, so.
Yeah,
that's
several
good.
that I spoke to identified as Littleton residents.
Yeah. And then, real quick, still would like to be able to have a moderator for the proposed May 23rd retreat, and so I have a call into him to discuss what that might look like, and I can update everybody at the next meeting on that.
Why don't we have Peter do it, since he'll no longer be on the board? He can act as referee. No? Okay, never mind.
He might want to.
I want to.
You're out of order. You sure you want me?
Okay, where else are we? Any more updates? No? Public input, anybody want to tell us anything good going on? Nothing?
Anything going on in your lives we should know about?
No? Good.
They're looking at me like I'm crazy.
We're right about on time.
It's a fair assessment.
Is there anyone here for the 8:40,
There's supposed to be.
6:40 A&R, so I have to stretch a little longer?
A little bit,
All right, okay.
yeah, because they were going to bring
Yeah.
John, oh, yeah, come on up. Sorry about that.
So I'm Jonathan Boland with Stampsky McNary, here with an A&R, seeking an A&R endorsement for a plan out on Fort Pond. It's two neighbors just doing a little parcel swap. So the areas and the frontages of the two lots aren't changing
Didn't we already see this?
This is,
next door.
yeah, next door.
Can we do them all? So what's the difference between this one and the one we just approved last month?
It's different people.
Is it the same kind of
But it's,
idea?
I think that was actually, we divided a lot. This is just a parcel swap up close to Fort Pond Road,
And who are the
make a
Can
little
we see a-
zigzag.
Can we see a piece of paper?
who are the applicants?
The Pearsons and the Scripps.
Pearsons and the who?
Scurfield.
So we just, that's the existing line, it's sort of a straight line.
This is a plan that's revised from the one that's posted.
Oh, okay.
This
This
is
guy's
Acton.
he's gonna get that, and this guy's gonna get that.
And what town is that in, Acton?
That's actually, that part's in Acton, so we're not,
But you're not changing anything in Littleton?
that's right.
But the lot itself changes, so.
Yeah, the ones we were
And this
talking about.
guy's in, this house is in Wilton.
And that's so that this house can have the appropriate,
He wants a little more, I think he wants to put a little structure over there.
yeah.
So he just wants a little more space.
Need the setbacks in Acton.
What are the names of the people and where are they?
Right here, Pearson and Scrivener.
Pearson, and that's, yes,
Both in Acton.
No, they're in Littleton.
he's in Littleton, yeah, they're in Littleton. They have an Acton address, 422 Fort Pond, but it's also 7 Sarah
Sarah
Indian
Indian
Way.
Way.
And I think somewhere I saw this shag mark, but I'm
Yep.
not sure where.
That's, well, it's not nothing to do with us, but yeah, I can see that one being in Littleton.
I'll sign
I'll sign it. Get a Mylar too.
Yeah.
it.
Make a motion that we approve the,
I'll make the motion. Approve, and as presented.
move seconded.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna just recuse myself again, just
Two of them or just a Mylar?
just for safety.
What do you want? Two of the Mylars.
Yeah, one of the Mylar and two of the copies would be perfect.
Here's the other.
Want this one back too?
Yeah, there's one here.
Good to see you too.
Jonathan, you'll just add today's date to it for me. Below their signature.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
When is town meeting, by
Thank
the
you.
way?
Monday, the 6th of May?
So we have a meeting before that?
Right.
Okay, so you have 2 meetings left. One more meeting after tonight, April, May, okay?
Yeah, I can do one of it. Did you sign that, Mark? You almost took over. Sorry about that.
Oh, you can't sign because you're acting.
I can, I just,
Decided
I'm
not
just
to?
choosing not to, so that there's no appearance of conflict of interest, just.
You can put a big E and no one will know it's not Ed. If you wanted to sign it.
There's enough of you that it's all right. If there wasn't, I would.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a 645 Cooper Farms Estates, over 55. Residential layout and update.
I don't think Kristen has met Chris yet.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good, how are you? I'm Chrissy.
Hi, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Hello, everyone else.
This is approved. Do we need Peter to step off on it, or can he?
I'm not signing anything if that's what you're wondering.
I'm not asking, I don't think we're asking to sign anything.
You want to ask me to sit here or stand up?
It's entirely up to you.
I'll sit until I'm told to leave. How's that?
Okay? Works for me. So,
So I'm not sure that Chris knows the whole story.
oh,
Does,
so maybe
you're
Chris will
related.
tell you you have to.
Sheila Field is my sister.
If you're recusing yourself from consideration of the application, I think you should.
Go sit with you over there?
Okay,
Settled.
so. Well, how do we go backwards now?
So at 6:45, it says it's a layout update and an affordable unit update as well. So, are you prepared to have such a?
I am waiting for my client to arrive. I know there was a tractor trailer turned over on 495, which may be a little slower getting here, so I don't know if that has impacted anyone else.
We'll keep ourselves entertained for a few minutes, how's that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Against my better judgment, why don't I talk to Ann about our little retreat? Since we have time to get
Talk about what?
your little retreat that you're talking about. Why don't our retreat. So why don't we get it finalized now while we have a few minutes?
Well, I would love to hear your ideas of anything else. I know that there was a draft presented to this board back in December. But there are key topics that I know have come up in the past couple of meetings that seem like it would be a good policy discussion, so,
Especially when you're gonna have two other people on the board.
right,
So we want to do it, which is May 20,
May 23rd,
which is a
Thursday.
Thursday.
It's the Thursday before Memorial Day weekend.
We want to have it obviously locally because we have to post it and people want to come to it, correct?
Correct.
So, have we decided where it's gonna be?
No, I think we have options, though.
Well, I
One of
think
them
with the
was-
selectmen, you guys did it, you did it at, did you do it at a restaurant? You did it at a restaurant?
We did the first one at Light and Water, and then that was the one that we had with a moderator come in. And then the second one was just an informal retreat that we did at El Forno.
Okay.
So I suggest we do that light and water while it's catered by Alforno.
Well, you laugh, but I think we should, I
That's
think we
what,
should.
should have
that's what we
lunch.
did, yeah.
Yeah, I think we should do it. So, you okay with that?
We can certainly plan for that.
Okay. So we,
What do you think, what do you think, who have we reached out to from moderator?
His name is Jeff Nodding, I believe. So Anthony provided me with his name and chat with him so that he had a sense of what he typically does in these situations and work with the content that we want to discuss.
so we have money set aside, we can tap into this somehow.
I believe that Anthony has funds, training funds set aside that we'll be able to tap into.
On our own, we don't have any.
We don't, $600 a year, we don't.
We could have a bake sale or something, or a car wash.
There you go, this could work.
All right,
We can do tours of your house.
with the bake sale. Yeah, that'd be,
Okay, good.
okay. Fine, we open it, obviously for posting the meeting, we open up to the public.
Yes.
Because, yeah, we only have really one more meeting to do this. and it's gonna be-
Okay, and that was the informal.
What else, any other ideas?
Okay, and then we're deciding.
Not really.
Rest of the developments we just
You know what? Are you good? Are you, will you attend even though you're not? Well,
I mean, I don't know if it would be appropriate for me to do that at that point, but
You could be a guest.
I might be.
might be a guest, yeah. Okay,
Two versus one.
so you're gonna put this all together, right?
With Martin, yes.
Yes.
Any input from?
Yeah, input, of course, you're gonna CC us on everything going on. right?
Everything.
You're not gonna sandbag us right at the very end.
Absolutely not.
Blind status or something?
It's gonna be televised too.
I don't think it should be.
I could use my phone.
I think it should be, we should, I think we have to post it, but I would rather not be televised. It's not a regular, since we're gonna be, have some frank, hopefully frank and insightful discussions.
That would be,
We should be inhibited by,
Special permit.
Saturday night.
I think residents would be happy that we're willing to sit down and talk about some of these bigger issues that folks are concerned about, so, yeah. good.
Okay, cool. They just have to remind us. Well, me anyway. Are we building a- are we good back there, or are you still waiting for more? Are you good, or we got more coming, more cavalry, or is this it?
We are here, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Are we ready? Okay, so. All right, so.
Mind if I
Please,
clear up?
We gotta figure out how to get back to it.
Jim? Good.
Okay, you got anything too, or? Okay. So do you want to fill us in on why you're before us?
You asked us, actually, I saw it came on the agenda a couple of days ago, so we are here at your request.
Before that, Matt and I had spoken, informed him that the board was asking him to come in for this meeting.
So you are asking us.
I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Yeah, you're talking about altering the over 55 component of Cooper Farm. Previously, we're approved with 24 lots with 6 affordables, and you now want to go down to 14?
16.
60. So we want to speak about the impact that that has to what was overall approved. We thought about it, and actually, since we have here if we have any other outstanding issues, we approve it. So 16, it's still going to be, so that would be 4 affordables,
Correct.
and are you changing what's proposed out there? Are they still?
There's some consideration as to what the design would be. Our expectation is this is done as a condominium, so we've done the first phase, which was 4 units. The next phase, we haven't determined how many are going to be in that phase, but we're committed to do the first unit, at least one, the same style as the 4 we have existing as affordable, so it will be comparable to what's already there. And then there's some consideration just based on what we're hearing from market feedback from potential buyers on how they'd like the remaining units to look. The existing units that we have and the plans that we had originally done were all 2-story units. About how many square feet, Michael?
Just under 1,600.
1,600.
There's one that was a smaller one.
But as we've heard, there's, especially for the 55 and over, a desire to have single level. So we're looking into, can we do ranches for some or all of the units that are going to be built out? As you know, when we got the original permitting, we're approved for more units than the septic than we have for septic capacity. So there's been a pullback both on the single family and the 55 and over, so we don't exceed our septic capacity.
How many single families are currently going to be constructed on the?
23 out of the 25, so 2 of them are going to stay open space.
Okay.
It is, one of them was
Right, 'cause
part of the
I-
negotiation with conservation to, when we decided to leave one of those open space on that, it was, a little more sensitive to the wetlands area right there. And another one was down by the access to the backfield, so that gave us a larger area to get in for the tractors to get in and the walking path right there. So we left that one as open space too.
So in the agreement, there was 25, the original agreement, there was
25.
25 single-family homes and
Yep.
24 55 and older, with 6 affordable components.
25% of
25%,
25%.
there's no,
Okay.
Yep.
and actually there's no percentage stated, but it was in the
Original
55 and over bylaw,
bylaw.
which has a.
Right.
25% state.
25% was stated. So part of the HCA that you had with the select board, in condition 7, if we go back to that, it was the 911 Goldsmith with the 12 rental units, again with the 25%
Yep.
affordable. What happened with that, or where are we, is that still going to come before us? Because it says
Well, part
a
of that
substantial
was,
time.
that was part of, if you read that, if we got $70,000 grant money for that as well.
For permitting.
For permitting, and if we had the ability to tie into the sewer, that was, that was part of the negotiation too. I didn't want to build And if you look at, prior to us doing that, you look at the initial plan that we had with that.
So I remember some
And it
initial
was,
conversations.
there was,
years
we
ago.
actually had a plan that was, I think it was almost approved. The cost to put a septic system in that site, raising that whole site 5 feet, it wasn't economical.
So I don't remember they were coming up for a vote of being approved. I remember seeing some preliminary and having some discussion. It was specifically
Yeah, we
talking about
had a
snow plows and stuff.
peer review with Green International. We went as far as the peer review and Board of Health. But it was too there was a 5-foot retaining wall around the entire site. It just wasn't affordable.
What's your point as far as that goes?
Well, so it's part of this HCA agreement, so,
It's not part of it that we have to do it. It's if we do
Right.
it, we get, I mean,
This-
so
you
you
get a
gotta read it.
70,000
You gotta
you get a
read that and say that
I've read it, and it
if we
says
do
that
do
the
it, you
town,
get the money.
Exactly.
you get, if you provide us with 25 affordable out of 9 and 11 Goldsmith Street, 12 units, if we got 25% affordable, the town would then grant you a $70,000 waiver for connection fees and/or permit fees,
Mhm.
right? So.
It's
I
not
would
a
see-
stipulation that we have to do it.
I would disagree. Then I would
Okay.
ask town council to weigh in on that.
My memory from when we were negotiating that provision of the HCA is that it was understood that at an absolute minimum, they might not pursue that development for a long time, not a long time, but for a decent amount of time off into the future. And it specifically says that they might not do that until, at a minimum, until after the Cooper Farm development is done. So it was contemplated that at an absolute minimum, that development might take a while.
And that doesn't hinge on that we got a reduction in the 25% affordable. We still are adhering to the over 55 bylaw that
That existed at the time.
that existed and we didn't change the amount of units for that. So, I mean, that was if there was and if we built it out, we would keep it in perpetuity in rental and have
On the Goldsmith.
on the Goldsmith,
Property we're talking about.
yes.
Okay.
But it's not feasible right now. It's not feasible to do, and it's
So if
been,
it goes out, so let's play the long game. If it goes out in a long time and we're fortunate enough to build a sewer system that would keep you so you wouldn't have to increase the grade, is this then a viable option?
if it's viable, yeah, if it's viable to us.
Well, to us as a team, the town and the fields, right?
Yes, I mean, it's still, this hasn't been precluded from happening ever. If the economics change, if the utilities, water, sewer are available, then yes, it's definitely a possibility that it could happen. But at this point, it's not planned.
My question is, what does that have to do with this? I don't understand why linkage at Goldsmith Street has anything to do with Cooper Farm. Have
It was
you-
part of our, part of it,
Negotiation.
yeah.
No, but I don't see the linkage, that's not.
Yeah,
what I'm
all right.
looking at. It's part of your negotiation with the town, I get that part of it. Have you haven't gotten a $70,000 reduction in
No.
any of the
No.
fees here?
No.
None of that?
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay, so that's still.
And if we did get that, we didn't pursue that, it clearly states in there that we would have to repay that $70,000 as well. So, I mean, that was part of the reason why I didn't need to take that, and I didn't want to take that at the time when we started that. It's just not feasible right now.
What about the house?
So that was my next point. So
Okay.
we're on, you guys are on record saying that this house would be turned over to the town, meaning the original farmhouse at Cooper Farm, in April of 2019. And we still anticipate that house being turned over in 2019 of April.
I also remember that was our first 2-year thing, and then I remember going one more year, but, I mean,
I mean, it's clearly the intention
Yes.
to gift this
So-
house to the town. I mean, there's
So
no
I feel like the
question about
town's given a
that.
lot at this point. We'd
And-
like something back.
And
I
in
think
terms of
I've
timing,
given
I think
an
that's something that
extremely,
we should talk about and figure out the timing for the town. I think it's perfectly fine that they're asking the question, and we should figure
the
out
people living there are moving out.
when,
I don't
We
think-
should be able to tell you that. I don't have an answer for you today. but it-
That's not a good answer. You told the selectmen a long time ago, when they pushed back a year ago, that April was gonna be the date that the town.
I don't recall that being true, but if
We
it
can go back
is,
through the
then
minutes. It's
I'm
definitely
happy
true.
to.
So-
I have the minutes that say we got an extra year too, so
Mr.
I have
Chairman?
the minutes too.
Do we have, I need to catch up on this, obviously I wasn't involved in it at all, but is there a decision that states like that, you know, that house gets turned to the town?
Part of this host agreement.
Okay, so part of the
It's
host,
also
does
part of
the,
the decision.
do they list a date in either one of those documents?
No date.
There is a date, although it's not, the date itself is not specifically called out in the agreement. The date, the milestone at which they were called upon to convey the house and the lot underneath it to the town in the agreement itself is once they've secured all permits and approvals necessary to develop Cooper Farm in accordance with the terms of the agreement, which is as shown, if not on that
Except
plan,
for that
on the
parcel
exhibit to
D.
the agreement.
So
But there's
under
a
your,
distinction, Chris, between the open space and the house, I think, when you look in the definition of those terms. So I agree with you that the open space was, we were required to give that to the town once permits were obtained, which has happened. To be clear, the open space has been gifted to the town. But the house, my understanding from, both from that agreement and discussions with various boards, is they would have 3 years. I think there's some disagreement, it might have been 2 years, to keep the house while development was being done, both so there could be a space on site for someone who's overseeing the work on the property, so we don't have a third-party resident there or use there while active construction is going on. But it was clearly the intent to turn this over as soon as construction was complete. And what's our timing, estimated timing on that is outside?
I have 3 more single-family houses left, and then the over 55s.
so is the understanding in terms of permits being obtained, was the language in there written in terms of all permits down to occupancy, or?
No, that
Okay.
would have been zoning, conservation, and as I understand it, and the applicant may have a different opinion, but that would have been zoning permits, the permits necessary to allow them to proceed to construct this project.
So those have all
Certainly-
been.
Certainly not
Those all
occupancy.
have been obtained at this point?
Those have been obtained.
Yeah.
One.
So I guess, you know, in my, viewing this from, you know, coming in new, I guess, in hearing that all the permits have been obtained and that was the deadline, and you can't meet it right now, maybe there's room to discuss an amendment and to have put something
Our
formally in
intention is to
writing.
give the house. Our intention
Is
is to
that
give the
something
house,
we
so.
can do?
The only, my immediate response to that is that and I appreciate that, well, the host community agreement that we're talking about is an agreement between the applicant and the Board of Selectmen.
Right, okay, so it would have
so
to
you guys,
provide to
and
them.
it was incorporated by reference in your permit, so you guys certainly play a role in holding the applicant's feet to the fire in terms of making sure all of the things are satisfied. But if we were going to formally amend this, that would require this development team to go in front of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Yeah. You want to maybe them?
I would like to say one thing about, I feel like we should set up, the house is going to be vacant soon, but we do still have the job site trailer there, and we need access, we use the water, there are things about the house that we use because it's an active construction site, and,
The electricity.
there have been things that, with gifting over the open space, and we have an easement so that we can still use, so it's just a little, when it's a house, we don't, I think what we need to do is sit down with the selectmen and talk about like what the town's plans in the immediate future for the house are. Like, is somebody gonna move in there that's gonna preclude us from using water and electricity and, you know what I mean? So I think that's probably what we need to do is set
Well,
up.
from what I read, it sounds like the house was intended to be an affordable housing unit.
It was an
for the
option,
town.
or as the town sees fit. And
Right,
it's
so
to
if
be
that
given to
happens
the
right
town.
away, you know what I mean,
Well,
that, we
the
just
town
need to.
there's a lot that would have to happen before the town could go ahead and make that an affordable unit. So I don't think it would be occupied. And I think if the deed was in
But-
possession of the town, I, as a member of this board, would feel a lot more comfortable moving forward.
To date, right now, we have met every obligation of the community host agreement, to date, right now. We are not, missing any parts of that community host agreement.
I disagree. The house was supposed to be turned over when you obtained all your permits.
No,
It hasn't occurred.
you haven't read it right then.
I'm going off of town council advice.
No, I think, Ed, your comment is absolutely correct. I think there has been some allowance made to not insist yet that that conveyance be made to the town, but under the terms of the agreement, it was due to have been made already.
I have it. Would you like a copy, Plnbrd?
I think the town's been very liberal with you on this project. You look in the paper and it says 23 houses, that you had intended to build 25.
No, the agreement says 25 and line 20.
But the agreement, the host agreement says 23.
The host agreement says 23, we permitted 25.
Right. Well, we never saw the host agreement. We came in and based on what they proposed to us.
So do you want us to go back in time to invite you to that meeting?
No.
All I'm saying is the town's been more than fair with you guys, and the outstanding issue now, and it's been hanging.
I've been just as fair to the town.
Over the town is the disposition of the house. And while we have you before us, but probably the last time we're gonna have you before us for this, we want a date. You gave us a date of April. It's April now, and we're just asking for the selectmen. It's not us, we're asking for the selectmen.
Then maybe the selectmen should ask
No,
us
they
to come
should've-
before them.
To be honest with you,
We'd be happy to
it should
postpone
have
this,
been
continue this until
straight
after
out
you see
long
the
before.
select.
I literally said I'd like to postpone this hearing.
No, I'd like to have
literally
this
said it.
discussion. Yeah, but we
And
wouldn't have had this discussion. We want to have this discussion. So if you want to go before the select board and let them know when you're going to turn the house over, that's great.
I'd be fine, happy to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Then we could postpone everything we have to do with dealing with this until they resolve it with the selectmen.
So the only other thing I think that's in play is they're gonna drop from the 23, was it 23 or 24 on the 55? It's 24 originally, you're going to 16. At 16 units, what are the affordables we're gonna get out of that in 55 and older?
25%.
4 units. All right, and originally we're gonna get
Six.
6. And the reason we're dropping down is capacity of the septic system? Is
And
that-
marketability.
Initially, that was a separate parcel that was bought, that was not contiguous with that parcel. Under DEP regulations, one parcel is allowed 10,000 gallons.
Mhm.
We had a separate parcel with a separate septic system on that separate parcel. They came to the conclusion that if it was using the same entrance, it was gonna be one parcel. So that's the reduction in, we lost 2 houses,
Mhm.
and the additional other houses that weren't affordable in the over 55, it was a blow to us too.
So are you planning on submitting a formal amendment to this application?
We'll have to submit a revision to the plan, at least to, we've already done to Board of Health for septic,
We're allowed 10,000 gallons, and we're under 10,000 for
and we
those.
will have to revise the condominium plans for the 55 and over to show less than.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would like to see a formal, whether, if you feel it's
Well,
a
there-
regular
there are
amendment
lots
or
that
a
don't get
minor
built on that
amendment.
someday get built on,
It
so
could
why
be
do we
just a
have to do
minor
that?
amendment, but I think it should be in a formal.
So before we get down that road, I mean, I'm still inclined to say that the 6 affordable units should still be coming to the town from that, because that's what we approved when they applied. Now, I understand that there was a calculation of 25%, but I'm looking at this as that we approved it because we were looking at a certain number of affordable units. The town shouldn't lose because you guys had bad luck or bad engineering, or you failed to comply with the
We follow the
I'm not-
bylaw, and that's all we're gonna do.
Yeah, the
We're not gonna
bylaw
do
requires
extra bylaw stuff or
25%.
anything extra.
It's not,
we
Is the
were-
bylaw 25%?
The old bylaws,
That's what we followed.
right?
It
And
doesn't
we
say.
We
don't-
followed 25% of the bylaw, and that's all we're gonna talk about.
And
Not
we
extra
have an
stuff,
Right, that's all I'm
not,
gonna talk about too, then, I'm done.
I'd like to continue this hearing.
Well-
I mean, this is a permit to build, it's not a requirement, we don't have to, developer doesn't, no one would have to build every unit up there. And, of course, they're gonna try to do as many as they can to maximize the return,
When,
but
when the development gets, Grist Mill, when that got approved, not every lot got built on because of what? Septic
Even if
capacity.
there wasn't a host
It doesn't
agreement
matter.
there. Yeah, it does matter.
No, it
That's the
doesn't.
point. It matters because the town negotiated with you, and the town gave up something. It gave up the right to buy this and keep it in perpetuity as open space. For that right, you asked for 23 lots and 13 houses. You went ahead and
I'd like to
said,
continue this, Aaron. I don't even want to talk about this.
you went to
Continue this,
25. You tried to build 25, but unfortunately, because of your septic requirements, you can't, and you wanted 24, so you tried to max it out as far as you could go with it to get the
Didn't max
most
it out,
advantage.
no.
Yeah, you did 24, the original host
Maxing it
agreement
out
says
would
12.
say not giving the town 23 acres, and that would be maxing it out.
and
The point is, the town
It's-
worked with you, and.
And we
I
worked with
agree
the town.
I agree with Ed, we expected something in return.
And I mean, if you look at this parcel, the amount of land that was gifted to the town is more than I think any other development that has happened in this town. I mean, it's, the amount of open space preserved is, I think, incredible. The fact that they can't build as many houses as they'd like, in some ways, I think, is something the board would normally be happy about, that we're not having the density that we had hoped to be able to get on this.
You have
piece of
tremendous
property.
density here, don't you? You have 24 houses on 3 acres up back there. We bent over backwards to give you
On
everything.
this-
That's
on-
the
this is-
bylaw.
we're looking at
It's the
I remember.
bylaw.
Look at
No, it
this.
wasn't.
This is
It's the
5
bylaw.
acres.
Mr. Chairman,
No,
could I
it
ask
wasn't.
town
No, it
council a
wasn't.
question just for my own edification? I wanted to know if they wanted to amend this decision that they were granted, would they have to follow the new senior residence bylaw that supersedes this? Or because this was permitted at a point in time where the over 55 was in place, would an amendment allow for this type of change, or for us to even consider it?
I agree with you that they probably have to come back in for an amendment of some kind, but I don't, and I'd have to think about the effectiveness of don't hold me to this answer on the effectiveness of the zoning, but there was a subdivision plan approved as part of this, so I
Okay.
think that would
Yeah.
almost certainly capture a zoning freeze that would insulate them from any zoning that's been adopted since this was originally filed.
Meaning that they could make an amendment under the old over 55 development?
And recall, the old 55 and over has a 25% affordability as opposed to the new senior residential, which falls under the 10%.
Which goes to the new one that we just approved, that goes back to the 25, so.
I'm sorry, which one?
We just approved another, we just modified that at town meeting, it's 25% now. We have, Cindy, I hate to put you on the spot, where do you guys want to stand in on this as far as the selectmen? Because since technically it is agreement between the developer and you guys.
Well, they have the host committee agreement, we have the
Right.
decision, it's two
Right.
separate agreements.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
if they want to go back before the board and modify the host committee agreement, they still have a decision that sits before us. It's affected by no other board, it's up to us to enforce or make decisions on this, and they would have to amend this decision, regardless of whether they amend the host committee agreement.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask one question? How many houses were originally expected through the over 55, and how many are now being proposed?
24 and
24 and now 16.
And then 25 was proposed in the original single-family, and now 23.
So the 24 went down to 16, and then the original was, in the host community agreement, it said 23, but now it went up to 24.
We allowed them to go to 25, and they're dropping back down to 23.
Okay.
So I just want to say one thing. When looking at the over 55 and the quantity of houses, we were just trying to, I think that Matthew's discussion with Maureen, which I could be wrong, and I wasn't privy to it, but I thought it was just kind of like, let's talk about this keeping in the loop at this time, this is what we're planning to do. Like, I don't even know that we're precluded from down the road building more houses if, in the over 55. Like, I don't know why this is a huge discussion. Like, if we were to be able to build 20 houses, if like the septic law were to change or something, then we would always do 25% affordable. Like, well, I don't know what the
We're looking for
harassment
that,
is.
but I think ultimately, the house hasn't been turned over, and we're trying to hold your feet to the fire, so we're looking for the house.
And
So if
I mean-
nobody's willing to give over the house, I'm done giving inches. It's time to give back.
I understand you feel that way. I do. I understand you feel that way. But at the same time, you know, there's two sides to every story. So also, we feel that there were several discussions where we said we needed to maintain the house for the construction period. And actually, it was like verbally said at meetings, like, so, and there's conspicuously, because I've gone back through the minutes, and it is, in one minute, it's referred, in one set of minutes, it's referred to. I've shared like detailed stuff, which I can forward to you guys. And there, in one of the recordings, missing from the archives, where we specifically talked about it, which is bizarre, but true. And when I proofread this host community agreement, that's the way I always understood it, was that that's when the house was being turned over.
And when your feet were put to the fire, you said April. It is April.
And so
It's April.
we had a meeting on site at the house. Is that what you're referring to?
My understanding from the
No,
select.
it was stated
When was
here,
the April?
it was
I
stated
know.
here,
I
in front of this
think it was
board, that they're gonna
here
turn the
for
house
that.
over. in-
Yeah. You told us you could turn the house over.
Cindy is-
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
So we did review the whole trail, paper trail, so to speak, and we did come up with April of 2019 as the date
Right.
that the house was turned over to the town.
Right.
We pieced all of that together, even though it does say differently in the host community agreement. We've given some leeway with respect to the house, and that's where the board stands on that. We were expecting April of now to have the house turned over. The other thing that I wanted to just ask about is paragraph 5 of the host community agreement, if I may.
But just, wait, hold, just one second.
Sure.
So you're conceding that it was April of 19, but now I would just like a little bit of acceptance that everybody's acting like we've been holding it for years.
No,
we've
no,
had
Janet,
We're in April.
yeah, we're in
We're
April.
we're in April, we're on April 2nd, first of all.
No,
And-
so, Janet, but to clarify, in the host community agreement, it's pretty specific that when you receive the permits, we were supposed to receive the house as well. Because it
Can
says
someone please
land
read
gifts
that exception?
and public benefits.
The land gifts
And
shall be
public
conveyed.
benefits, paragraph 2, page 2.
Paragraph 3, the land gifts provided in section 2 above, land gifts shall be conveyed to the town at the time that the developer has secured all permits.
Right.
That's the land gifts, and then we have the house,
It's
which is when we
separately
talk.
spelled out very clearly. And it's like,
Just read it aloud so everybody can hear it. Just go
let me
ahead.
speak slowly. So-
I don't know where you're looking.
On page
Go ahead.
3.
Okay.
So, number 3, it says that the land gifts will be turned over, shall be conveyed to the town at the time at which the developer has secured all permits. Right? But the reference to the house, and I haven't looked at this, like, honestly, in probably 6 or 8 months. Where does it refers to the town, to the house in a separate paragraph?
Right, it's going to be under, the house is under.
Yeah, so Janet, if you
2D.
read paragraph 2, page 2, the developer, subject to approval, subject to obtaining the town's waiver under Mass General Laws, Chapter 61A, Section 14, and receiving the permits and approvals defined below, agrees to the following land gifts and public benefits, subject to minor modification as to the size and lot configuration, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Subparagraph A is the gift of land, open space area A, area B, correct?
Yep.
Then you go down, area C, the walking trails. Subparagraph D, page 3, donate the existing residential home in the Cooper Farm to memory.
Yep.
So it's right there.
Right, but,
We're talking timing.
right.
You know, when we have town council, it's
Yeah.
plain
It's
and
all,
simple.
it's all, the intent of the agreement was that all of the conveyances to the town under paragraphs 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D, and 2E would all happen in accordance with the timing under paragraph 3, which is when they obtained all their permits. It was all supposed to happen at the same time. And the town is engaged in it. The town has, without ever amending the terms of the agreement, been willing to work with the applicant until now.
Until now.
But the actual timeline for the conveyance has always remained the same under the terms of the agreement and has never changed.
Right.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, it sounds like we really have the Board of Selectmen review the issue regarding the house conveyance, and then any kind of amendment for a change, if any, for the housing, for the affordable housing and these 55 plus.
Well, I kind of agree with Ed. It's all, that, the host agreement having been said, the house part is, you know, if they agreed to donate it by April, they haven't done it. They told us in a public meeting here that they were going to. Now they want to change the affordability, and the affordability was what?
We're not changing the affordability.
You're changing the amount of units we're gonna get in the affordability, and that's the issue. It was.
It's the same amount of, it's the same percentage.
It's not the same amount.
Yes, it is. It's the same percentage.
Percentage, different number.
Same, yeah, different number, different amount.
Is it it's the bylaw that was
If
approved?
he meets the requirement, I'm flexible, I'm looking for a commitment tonight that I haven't heard yet, that's all. So,
Okay, all right, so we're not gonna, obviously, we're not gonna get an agreement as to when.
Janet,
I just-
pick a date, Janet.
I don't know, I just don't know how quickly that it can happen. I mean, I literally just need to know, like, I need some stuff back from the town too about, I mean, do we have to move the construction trailer? Like, where do we put it? You know what I mean? There's just certain stuff.
You have a construction site, it's not news to you to how to run a construction site. You put a construction trailer on the vacant part of land, on your construction site, I mean,
And we
it's,
have easements on the open space, so we can leave it right where it is. We'll
It's
just have
not-
to look at the.
and it shouldn't be a
open space.
surprise to you. The town's been talking to you for 2 years about the disposition of that house. And the fact that we're holding your feet to the fire now is shame on you for that. It shouldn't have come to the 12th hour for that. If you agree, if your
We
agreement
tried
was,
that
if your
6 months
agreement,
ago.
if your
Shame on
agreement
you
was
on
for
that.
12, for giving it back in April, you should have been prepared to give it back in April. We'll move on from this. You work it out with the selectmen as to the speedy disposition of the Cooper, what do we call it, the Cooper house, the Cooper farmhouse.
Right.
And are we done with this other than that?
Yeah.
Anyone else have any more?
No, I think I understand the lay of the land at this point.
All right. We expect the two parties, we don't want to be a referee to it if we don't have to be.
Right.
So we'll move on from this, okay? You guys work it out. Sooner rather than later. Okay, so now, we've done that, we have. All right, it's a little late. We have a 7:30 deliberation vote on the 7 o'clock, 80 King Street, Weber Village, it's now being called. Okay. You want to put your Weber Village hats on now?
Absolutely.
I think I don't know.
You want to stay?
No, you take over.
So, final set of plans, Ben turned over. Green has looked at them. Is anyone from Green?
No,
We're good with that?
yes.
We have the, we have the,
I've already been sick.
so we have the agreement that we've had town council and the two, take a look at. Because I like papers that much, you know? It makes me look
Can you imagine the pile of paper that we
I
have?
know, but it makes me look smarter because I'm not surfing the net looking for the stupid thing. Okay. Okay. Went to the project, yeah. File. You look at it, you look at it.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for the yields.
Are we working off of the one more that you sent on?
If you're prepared to vote, if you would condition final wording as to town council, gives us the leeway to dot the i's and cross the t's and. It would have been an email, I didn't post that on.
I don't mind that.
working document.
Go here.
You don't have a copy. I must have a paper copy somewhere.
Draft decision?
Is it this one?
The March 27th
It's on which version?
received comment draft?
Yeah, that one right there.
That's one I have. That's the last one I've seen. I don't know if there's been any changes on
Which
town
one
side.
is this one?
Is it the March 27th one, the
Yeah.
most recent?
I have an extra copy too.
Right. All right, so, the submissions are all complete and adequate, we have no issues with that. No nuisance, no degrading, design requirements. We're still tentative of what happens with the DEP with the entrance, correct?
Yes.
MassDOT.
DOT, yeah, we've, well, if you, I'm happy to update you if you appreciate
Yeah,
that.
sure.
We filed with them, they gave us a short list of comments that were, have actually been incorporated into this plan set, so we just need to hear back from them finally, but we don't expect an issue there.
And one related part of that, the curve, you may recall, of the roadway as it was coming onto King Street, we have an agreement with the abutter, both for providing some driveway access for them, and they agree that they've accepted that the curve is there at the front of their property, which was what the DOT requirement was. As long as the abutter was okay with it, then DOT was okay. We submitted that draft access and driveway easement to Marin today, and I have paper copies if you'd like that. It's also gone to town council in case you would like their blessing.
Nitrogen, we did,
You got that, yeah?
Yeah, we got that, and Corey took a look at it, and he was good with it.
project 42% impervious, they've filed for a special permit for agricultural resources as well, right? That's all part of this, okay? And all with reverse, design, build, reverse. It complies with the goals of the master plan. You're gonna donate $3,000 per market rate unit to an entity that we were trying to decide who's gonna get it.
Well, my suggestion is to the town of Littleton for the purposes of, if it's affordable housing,
Right.
reflect that, and then that way, we have the option, if it makes sense, to ask town meeting to direct it to
To the CPC.
CPC blended fund in the housing, affordable housing bucket, then you get the state match, 15%, whatever that is, and then you can direct it to the affordable housing trust, but that, it leaves open that possibility.
So right now, I think we have it going to the Littleton Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and that, well, okay.
Right. We're trying to figure out where to put it in the
Yeah,
CPC.
definitely, that would be great.
It gives us time to have that discussion, see if it makes a difference to the developer or not.
Senior residential,
As long as it's being earmarked for affordable, and that's what we were trying to encourage and support.
Is there any way to have it be for senior affordable, or, no?
Well, that's the way
Yeah,
the
that's-
condition reads now. It says to
That's true.
benefit the senior residents in the town of Littleton.
We've learned recently that if we try to age restrict, then we're not able to
Right.
count on the subsidized housing
Yep.
inventory. If that's the intent, you can do that.
No, fair enough, I understand.
Oops, sorry.
so, on the conditions, are you, we did green did everything. I'm on, Mass DOT, the intersections, violation building permits, stretch kitchen, codes.
What number are you on?
I'm looking at, 14 conditions. That has to do with site prep, including rough grading, no fill, to be provided to anybody township, this is the town desires to install additional tennis courts. Am I missing the tennis court part somehow?
It's coming.
And why is that before the tennis courts? Kind of like the cart before the horse, but.
Well, and in there as well, I think we also need to talk about adding an easement in for
And if I may, there had been some discussion at the last hearing about the composition of the tennis courts. And you'd asked the developer to look into the pricing of having concrete rather than asphalt, reinforced concrete rather than asphalt tennis courts. And my understanding is the pricing on that comes back about 5 times to do concrete courts as asphalt courts. The developer would prefer to do the asphalt ones because it's much more economical and it's another cost that doesn't get passed through to the unit owners. But if they were to do the reinforced concrete at the request of the board, they would not be committing to grade the area for an additional court just because the amount of funds of this project that have now been dedicated to the tennis court project have well exceeded.
Jennifer, I'm sorry, we did some more research and findings that you actually cannot put concrete on any portion of the septic. So that septic, the one that touches the corner of the, could not be,
Can you put asphalt over it?
Yes.
yes.
Okay, so what are we getting at?
No,
So-
let's continue.
Okay.
We'll get back to that.
All right.
So that's it.
So if you're doing 2, you would agree to, Janet and Michael, just to confirm.
Michael.
If you were doing asphalt, you would agree to grade
Yes.
the area for an additional court
Michael
if the
did.
town wanted it.
Have a meeting with the athletic director to talk to him about it.
You have or you will?
I did.
You did, okay.
on Monday.
And what was the outcome of that meeting?
Well, the 5 other tennis courts that are in Littleton now are asphalt. 3 of them are 20 years old, and they're still in perfect condition at the high school. The cost benefit to have a concrete tennis court is 5 times more money. If there is anything that has to happen on the septic in 20 years, then the whole tennis court has to get removed. And then to replace it is another $100,000 per tennis court compared to $20,000 per tennis court. Initially, we talked about tennis courts. The very first thing we said, was asphalt,
And my first conversation with the AD was to build them to ASBA standards.
And there is standards using asphalt as well.
So if they can't go on the top of concrete, would you guys be amenable to building them on town property?
Initially, when we first talked, and we'll have to go back, I don't know.
Because you just brought up something that makes it even more concerning to me, is that if the septic has to be improved, upgraded, corrected, repaired, we're gonna lose the tennis courts anyway. So I'd rather see them not on top of your septic system.
But-
You just made me aware of that, so now I'm.
But there
concerned.
is septics that have asphalt on them all the time, all over the place. And they do fail eventually, and then they do get repaired, and then it's asphalt back on top of them.
Right.
It does concern me a little bit in terms of the cost to the future homeowners, especially affordable owners, if it ends up having to be repaired. I know that just tennis courts in general.
There isn't a concrete tennis court in this town. Not one.
Nothing says they can't be.
Well, pave everything with gold, too.
We could make that a condition.
So where are we at?
I'm out, I got nothing else.
So, again, I'd be amenable to having them locate them off of the septic system and on town property, but to still construct them. And we could work with the schools and find a proper location on school-owned property for 2 ASBA reinforced concrete tennis courts.
Are you sure we have?
So for me to do that, then I have to increase all my cost and do exactly like what we did before, and they're gonna eventually go to somewhere, or it's not a viable project. So either I pass them on to a prospective homeowner, and then the cost goes up, and now we're, at a certain point, you have to say, okay, this is the standard. You know, I don't know what else to say. I never said I would build and pour concrete tennis courts. I said
Truthfully,
I would
if we-
prep
if we have to
concrete,
spend
I'd prep and
$400,000
let
on
the
tennis
town
courts,
proceed.
we can't do this project. It's like, Lauren recently asked for some numbers to look at like cost for if the town were to want to buy additional affordable units, so I did some cost studies and looking at like what our potential costs are per unit and trying to like really look at what we've have in so far to date on engineering, legal, looking at, you know, I was like trying to do some of the, and I'm like, I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you, we're close on this project to being feasible. So, I mean, it's close. I'm happy to share, like, we could sit down
Give me another
offline.
amenity then.
Yeah, and I could, and share like the, share cost information with you. But truly, like, you know, if you wanna sit down at a conference table and show you my spreadsheets and you can, you know, shoot holes in them and see what you think and, but yeah, if it comes to building concrete tennis courts,
Maybe we could strike maybe there's a compromise, maybe we could put a deeper asphalt cross-section in. It would provide some protection, you know, a deeper base. Build it more like a road. You could go, you have 3-inch base with an inch and a half top.
It's a septic system that we're talking about. So if we were building somewhere else, then I'd be willing to talk about improved construction techniques other than just an asphalt tennis court.
The configuration of those that's ideal. The configuration of the ones at the high school where they're back to back, that's not ideal. I mean, you can spread them out a different way, there's really not, I mean, taking the tennis courts right there and then moving them that way would require either we do, you know, we're using part of the fill from the septic, part of that to get our elevation, and if you start moving them all over out of the way, then we're gonna need additional fill, and, I mean, we've gone through this, I mean, this is the best option that I have. Asphalt tennis courts, right there. That's the amenity that we provided.
I personally don't feel that strongly about the material one way or another. I think the goal is to have amenities that are helping seniors stay active as they age. And obviously tennis is a great sport because it's low impact. And you can play until your 90s if you're able. But I want to know, like, what's the biggest concern that you have over the material?
My concern, the material, so it's the longevity of the court itself.
Okay.
Reinforced concrete will last, it's a better form of construction, it will last much longer.
Okay. Because my thought was if there's one, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's one court over the leach field and then one court that's not, and then one that's
Yep.
half on the town partially on town
That
property,
one's just a prepared base.
partially on the other.
Correct.
What if we asked for one concrete tennis court built not on the leach field, and then another concrete tennis court built on the town land, and just have two?
If the town
And
wants to
then
pay
is
the
that
difference
something-
between concrete and asphalt, I'm all for it.
So my thought is that we were showing two and the third one prepped, to offset the cost of not doing the concrete, I'd be willing to waive it, he gave us 3 complete tennis courts in asphalt with a deeper base cross.
I don't know.
That's my,
Good one up. I didn't know this was Let's Make a Deal.
Well-
How were we gonna?
Done that every
Yeah.
meeting so far.
Down and get on with our lives, fine.
what I'm hoping.
To be clear, I mean, you have to say what you are offering. If you are in fact offering 2 asphalt tennis courts as shown on the plan, with
Yeah, and they were like
the
fences,
agreement to,
nets.
Complete tennis courts, that's what we were offering.
the 2 complete on the
tennis
land,
courts.
with the
Yep.
agreement to prep a third one if the town wants it. And
Yes.
that's our plan that we're presenting here
That's it,
for
that's all
your
I'm not,
review and approval.
Sorry.
we're having a disagreement amongst ourselves. So I still, we can't keep going, we can't proceed until we know we have an agreement. I have a proposal, even though Mr. Bowen won't like it. I get the linkage between the tennis courts and seniors wanting to stay active and everything else like this, but what we're trying to do is what's for the best interest of the town. We're not age restricting it, so we're not going to get a lot of seniors out there. We're not deed restricting it, so we're not gonna get a lot of seniors out there. So I don't know if the tennis courts are really, it's intended as an amenity for the town, and that's why we're making them available not just to the 17 people that live here, to everybody else in the town. I would rather see the money. I understand why we're doing it, and I understand and I appreciate why we're doing it. But since we just had the Cooper property in front of us right now, I would rather see the field where the Coopers, the actual soccer field over there be done over, so that it's an actual ball field and not a tumbleweed field, instead of building 2 tennis courts for 17 residents and maybe some high school kids or something like that, and make that available to everybody else in the town, as opposed to, kind of, to my mind, solves 2 problems and stays away from that leach field.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to disagree with that, just because I think the intent of the senior residence bylaw is to, you know, to create housing and a development that is attractive to people that are aging in place in Littleton. And, you know, the AARP has found that tennis is one of the best sports to play out into your late ages. And I think it's great that it can benefit the greater community as well, bringing in different ages, mixing together, which is also great for our community. But, you know, they proposed this, you know, the hearing has closed, so we're making our decision based on what has been proposed. The way I stand is I'm really, the material doesn't matter as much to me. You know, so I'd like to hear kind of, I guess, what, this sounds like this is gonna be one sticking point in the relationship and how we wanna write it. So, I think it's a material question, really.
And my perspective is that I think we need to focus on what it is that we have in front of us and
I agree.
bringing in something else that connects the
I'm
two
just trying
different
to throw it out
projects.
as an alternative to, as a, something to move up, to break up the logic of it. That's all I'm proposing, okay? I totally get it, I totally understand tennis is really more of a sport for seniors, and I reserve the right to.
I mean, technically speaking,
It's an
if we were
all-age
truly
sport.
looking after seniors' needs, we would be doing clay courts, but we know that is completely cost prohibitive. That'd be lovely.
Grass courts, what do we do grass courts?
Yeah, it's only 5%.
All right, so we're back to you again.
Well, if anybody else wants to weigh in on what
What, yeah, what do you want to think about 3 asphalt courts instead of 2 concrete bunkers?
Well, so they would be 3 in the same place. Is that what you're
shown,
proposing?
as shown on the drawing,
Or just
3
be
complete,
asphalt?
not two in one prepared base.
Well, I think what was presented to us with the application was 2 and 1 and 1 prepared base. Right.
But all along, I have maintained that it needed to be reinforced concrete, and they're saying that that's cost prohibitive, so to offset the cost, I'm just asking them to step up and give more, and give us 3 in asphalt. They're decreasing the cost of construction.
When you asked us to step up and provide more, I think that's when we offered, the developer offered $3,000 per unit to go to elderly services, to the housing trust. There has been a good faith effort to offer more when asked. I think on the tennis courts, I know there's been some discussion and disagreement amongst the board on whether or not that was the amenity they thought was best, but that is the one that the developer has offered. They've offered to do 2 complete asphalt tennis courts with fences, with nets, ready to go. They've offered to prep the ground for a 3rd court if the town would like that on their land. They're happy to do that. And that is what we've.
And I'd like to see them bring that to completion.
Not gonna happen.
Well, that's probably not gonna happen, so you're gonna have to do something.
Sorry.
Based on that. So, I guess we're gonna leave it as it is with 2
I'll
asphalt.
go through the rest of the conditions, see if you guys can agree on the rest, 'cause
Okay. So, let me see, what else we got? That's the tennis courts. Single-family senior cottages and duplex cottages.
What number?
Up to about 17. Building market rates and affordable units, 8 units, 1 gets affordable, 15 units, 2 gets affordable. And you're proposing 17. And you get, can't round up either.
Those are based, are you looking at number 18?
Yeah.
So those figures are based off what the inclusionary bylaw is.
Right, so it's 2
Okay.
units.
Right. So they're gonna look the same as the market rate.
In that section, I just want to make sure that any, decisions moving forward were consistent, that, can we make sure to include that they're indistinguishable on the exterior, however the 40B language reads, but also to include that they need to be dispersed throughout the site? Because I think that's also included in our inclusionary zoning bylaw, just to make sure.
So,
Can you identify which?
yeah, it was
And then there's the, do we have the agreement, draft of how it's gonna be transferred to
Doesn't
the
matter.
homeless association? Did they do a homeless agreement?
It will be a condominium, so there'll be a declaration of trust with the
Right, the next backstop you have would be, they'll request the plans to be endorsed, because to record a plan with the decision. So that's the next backstop, we can make sure that at that time that all the associated legal documents are presented and reviewed.
Done by then, yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, so we'll catch it there. Okay, so now we get down to 3,000 per market rate unit for Littleton Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And the senior,
Would you rather choose the town on that wording?
For
For-
CPC.
the town for
Affordable
senior,
housing.
for senior affordable housing.
Do you want to include senior?
Well,
Affordable.
did you say that you would, if you did that, then you wouldn't get the matching funds?
No, we can still put it in there. It'll be up to the town to put it in there. Right?
If you include the word senior, then we run the risk of not being able to count units produced under the subsidized housing inventory. If you don't include the word senior
I don't care.
in that statement, then.
So just,
But it'll go to the town and then the town can put it in the CPC.
Does CPC restrict that housing funds be used for homes that are classified under the SHI? And then would we then not be able to use it if we designate it as senior? 'Cause the definition for community housing, doesn't it stipulate that it has to be used towards the state's definition of affordable housing?
I think so, but I couldn't say for sure.
I'm just cautioning that maybe we want to make sure, I mean, either way, it doesn't matter, I guess, right?
It's a
But,
policy decision.
but maybe it doesn't, maybe we wouldn't get the match. I just would be interested to know if that's true or not.
So the simple solution is not to say senior, just say affordable housing.
Affordable.
And then we can,
Okay, conditions for the project's completion. Following amenities as shown on the plan. 2 regulation tennis courts to be constructed has to be determined. Walking trails shown on the plan, the community gazebo, 8 or more raised garden beds, at least one should be accessible via walking path. Benches, bike racks, shade, landscaping trees located as depicted on the plan. Water infiltration shall be in accordance with town water department specs. Open space should be conveyed to the project's homeowners association or homeowners trust and.
For nominal consideration, yeah.
Sorry?
So there, I just made a little comment about removing the word Littleton Conservation Trust, but rather it's really going to be acting for the Board of Selectmen. Under number 28.
Yeah, so you don't want it to go to Conservation Trust, you want to go to the select.
We should nominate one.
Yeah, I think Littleton, you keep the Conservation Trust out of there. It's not a big enough piece to do conservation being interested. It's town of Littleton land all around it, so we'll take the trust out of there.
Well, I had it more because it was or, so that way it makes it very clear
Right.
which one it is. Okay.
To fertilize the water soluble nitrogen base, water quality will not be degraded below the standards of the property line, no sodium de-icing, stormwater management system, just be no improvement in local floor areas. We're capping it at 1,800 square feet. Sheds are individual homes for the position they're allowed, if so, what's the setback as well?
Right, and that was the policy, one policy question that we hadn't talked about. Are you allowing other outbuildings in the future if a unit owner were looking for a shed?
Oh.
And apply for a building permit, what do we?
Do you anticipate?
What do you contemplate?
I mean, I think in this,
Say something.
in looking at this particular site, it's pretty tight. I wouldn't recommend, I wouldn't wanna see it on this particular site, but I think moving forward, if we wanted to, consider something, or if we wanted to talk about considering something here, I would look at a setback from the open space, not just the property line. And, you know, maybe keep it to what is our typical setback in a residential district, at like 10 feet from the open space, something like that. I don't know, those are just my thoughts that I'm considering.
So the plan would be not to have any individual sheds for individual homeowners, but the homeowners association might want to have a shed for equipment, maintenance equipment, or
There will be one near
gardening
the
equipment.
septic tanks. There'll be a shed there.
Yes, there's a
Is that
concealment
noted
shed.
on the plan?
It's gonna be on the septic plan. When we go to the, it's gonna be that white space, kind of right to the right of the,
Past the end of the
The
road.
duplex.
Yeah,
President agrees to market the project units exclusively to
Well,
buyers.
so did we,
What?
I don't
So
know
what-
the answer.
I thought
no
we-
individual sheds.
I thought we agreed,
No
no
individual.
individual.
Okay.
Yes, but if the homeowners association wants a shed.
Put a shed for maintenance.
Can you limit, we should limit that number then. We should have just said the homeowner association.
one for the homeowners. So I think, but they have it on one of the plan sheets, I think, right?
And, okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think maybe we can just put it in a finding that there's one and that there shall be no more than one.
Okay, general conditions.
Sufficient?
Not to
Yeah,
exceed a
is
certain
it
amount of
including
square
that one,
footage.
you think, or I mean, maybe they can make it a little bigger and have a back to it or something?
Should we set a size on the shed? I mean, we don't want the size of the structure. of the house.
Craig, how big is the pump?
I think we have a 10 by 12. If you wanted it a little bigger to have some,
I'm just thinking about the gardening supplies for the little community beds.
So we're gonna say, cap it at 12 by 16 or 12 by 14?
12 by 20 gives you,
That's the biggest shed you can have without,
yeah, correct. Well, I think,
So maximum 12.
we're just doing square footage.
Okay, general conditions, the developer agrees to market the project units exclusively to buyers with at least one resident, 55 or over. No unit shall be deed restricted or age restricted.
And then actually, we don't have to say that second part, but no units have to be.
And that's been good for 6 months. Go ahead.
Just wondering if I may, there were two things that, and one of them we had flagged for town council. On condition 16, says, building inspector shall not issue a building permit for any unit until the planning board or its designee has verified that all the conditions of the inclusionary housing bylaw have been met. And I think that's just in terms of timing. We won't meet the requirements of the inclusionary housing bylaw until we've actually built and sold a.
That condition should refer to, there's a deed, restriction has to be recorded. The nitrogen loading restriction.
That's,
It
is that,
should be that
that's
number.
separate.
The X,
That's a different
Article XXI, is that what?
Oh, so if that's the nitrogen loading one, we have that in a separate condition.
Right, and that's
So maybe if we can just say we have to record that restriction before a building permit, because otherwise the language was confusing to me. And then the other one, in 23, again, it's just a timing. No certificate of occupancy issued for an affordable unit until an affordable housing deed restriction has been executed and recorded with the registry. Typically, that restriction is in the deed, we include it in the deed itself. Are you envisioning something?
I'm happy to defer with somebody with experience on the process. It's,
So typically, we'd put the deed restriction in the deed and it would be recorded as a single document. I'm just thinking of going through the mechanics of closing and selling one of these units.
so you're not looking to restrict that at all.
We can think about that, but that sounds reasonable. We can go ahead and come up with something.
And if
Different
we're
language.
final wording according to town council,
Yeah.
we'll have a little bit of leeway to.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So now we've done, does the board have any other outstanding issues or questions?
So Green International had some
Yeah.
items highlighted that it wanted us to comment on.
Yes.
Um,
I thought we were all done with them.
I think you said, are you otherwise satisfied, so there was a hydraulic, where was it? Number 15, I know the comment.
So, Anna, they had like 4 or 5 issues.
Okay, so, why don't you read them?
So, under Green International's peer review letter, the site plan, item number 1, they requested, as noted at the March 7, 2019 Planning Board hearing, submitting the approved access permit to the town prior to plan endorsement shall be a condition of approval. So I think
Right, and
that's
that
something
is
that's
a-
already in the decision.
That's correct.
Then, item number 11, recommend the board condition their approval and proof of recording the easement with the registry of deeds and proof of said recording to be submitted to the town prior to plan endorsement.
Endorsement, right. and
That's in there.
Yep.
Grading easement. Talked about the tennis courts. And so then regarding the zoning bylaw comments, item number 15, the applicant has lowered the site by 1 foot, and their explanation for not lowering the site further is understandable. We respectfully defer to the board to determine if additional lowering of the site to be closer to existing grade is desired.
We can't lower it anymore. We've gotten everything we could out of it.
I don't have.
It's a groundwater offset
If
issue.
Green is okay with it, in terms of having, everything infiltrating on site, which I do believe he stated at the last meeting. Is that right, Warren?
That's correct.
So, that's what I think I would be the most concerned about, and if Green has found that they're doing that now by the last time that they had submitted the changes, I would be okay with it.
Yeah, that's your policy decision to make.
I agree.
Finding.
It agrees as it works, and it's, yeah, it would be more desirable to be at ground, the existing level, but it agrees as it works, 1 feet is a foot above it, I think that's the best we can offer with that situation.
Well, it's really 4 feet above, but 1 foot less than it was previously proposed. And I think Green's biggest concern, at least from what I understood, and Warren, tell me if this is right, they were concerned originally because it seemed like they were concerned about, potentially some subsurface infiltration areas not being able to maintain some of the major storm events, but now they feel comfortable with it.
Right, they got the additional information.
Okay.
So are all good on that then?
Okay.
And then I think the last one is trees. 16. No, I'm sorry, number 40. So it is our understanding that the board is in favor of the current density. We defer to the board for final determination on this item. So it refers to whether or not we want to take a look at the open space being subtracted from the overall lot size and changing the maximum density. So instead of 17, the maximum would be 12 allowed.
I've never read that section of the bylaw to intend it to be subtracting the open space.
Yeah, so I don't think so either, and I wanted to just ask you whether or not there's any precedent for doing it that way. Okay, so we'll just leave it at this. So yeah, we're done.
It's the 12th hour, it's too late to do it. Let's put it that way. It should have been.
I think it should be written in the bylaw, if that's the intent, it should not say of the lot, it should say of the buildable area. you know?
That's, if you
But that's
mimic-
for, if that's something that
If
people
you
want
mimic
to look
the open
at.
space, how we did for conventional open spaces, that's how it's done. But the fact that this really is a new hybrid of it, we weighed in on it, and we didn't weigh in on it. It was brought up early on, it's the 12th hour, and it's too late to be addressing that issue now.
Okay, well, they just wanted to get
I
our
know, and
input,
it
so.
was brought up, like I said, it should have been addressed. You can't do it at 12th hour and say you're 2 cents now, it's like, that's not.
Okay.
That's, it should have been, if it was an issue, it should have been an issue a long time before this. Anyway, so, where are we at?
We're back to
Okay.
tennis courts.
Well, this is a special permit, you need 4 out of 4 votes for it. Do you, are you good, are you prepared, Kristen, are you prepared to vote?
Yep.
Anna, are you prepared to
Yes.
vote? Are you prepared to vote?
I'd like to ask the applicant one more time to reconsider the third tennis court. And while we're discussing, I just want to think about how long we've been going down this road.
Each tennis court costs $75,000. That's the cost for a tennis court. So we're looking at $150,000 worth of tennis courts. And like I said, I can't just make the decision on my own anyway, but after recently looking at the pro forma for the project, I just honestly don't see another $75,000.
If there was 5 other tennis courts in Littleton that were concrete,
It has
I
nothing to
would
do with
it.
what's there. It's-
No, so we're gone, we've moved to
Yeah,
asphalt.
it doesn't, I couldn't care less if every other, it's like either the money's there or it's not, and they're just,
So it's another 5,000 per unit
it doesn't.
for a third, in terms of
It
cost.
just adds cost to the units, and
Or sales cost.
I thought that, the amenities that we gave, the additional costs that we provided to the seniors were the amenities and the concessions that we made that were part of this project. Maybe we would have done something different than tennis courts if that was, gonna be the sticking point. I don't know.
Well, so,
This is-
I
this
just
is-
want you to take a minute and think about the time we spent on this, that little walk down. And then put my hat on for a second and think about what my job is. My job is to get the most for the town.
I hear
You did a great job,
And that's what I'm
the
doing.
best, the very best you could do.
I could do,
I
I think I
commend
could
you
do a
for
little
getting
better.
everything you
If you
could
look at
out of
the
the
list,
developer.
and like you look at the
Beautiful,
line items
beautiful
of,
job.
even just, bench, $1,200, bench, like, if you look at all this stuff, honestly, we're spending a
Mailbox is $3,500.
ton of money on amenities. We really, Scout's honor. It's,
We're filling up in the back, I think we need to move on.
I'm honestly, I'm generous, I really am, but there's like a point when it's just like, you can't.
I think it's time,
There's gonna be a nice path going over to the high school, a nice start, and
You can rest assured that like, you're squeezed everything, I'm telling you, I promise.
you did a good job. You did.
it's time to vote. We've gone all this way, we've done everything we could. It's time to decide whether this is in the best interest of the town of Littleton.
I think they're just dumbfounded how you and I have swapped roles in the last meeting.
It's unbelievable.
I'm prepared to vote.
Okay. I just, you know what, I just wanna move on. We're not getting any younger here. All of us are not getting any younger, I think it's time to move on to approve it, or whatever we're gonna do. We'll move on with this. So, having said that, there's no other outstanding issues, it's, I'll entertain a vote, a motion to approve the what are we, the Weber Village behind 80 King Street, senior residential development. We need a vote on the aquifer, water resources, special permit for the inclusionary housing, and the senior residential over 55 bylaw. Do you want to do it?
No, do
Senior residence.
Senior residential development.
You can't pass these.
I try to get 55 in this one. And affordable, I say affordable too.
That's right. And that's particularly is why there's one consolidated decision draft for.
Right, for all, everything. So, all those in favor of the.
Did you have a motion?
Yeah, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. I was waiting for you. If you, I was willing to be there with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate all the time.
Appreciate your patience.
If you in Plnbrd. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, we have, now what do we have? Are we all done for the night? People still in the room. We have a 7:20, we're unfortunately a little bit late.
Michael, that was fun, thank you.
Bonnie Hall, how do you do?
What time is the public hearing?
7:20, what do you want
No,
to?
the hearing, zoning bylaw.
Zoning bylaw is 8:15.
Okay, so we're still good for that.
Well, we're gonna probably miss it, but
Yeah.
is that okay? So let's get Jones Meadow out of the way. So do we have, oh, here's yours. Do you have a decision, a paper decision for that? Mike?
There you go. How are you? Becky. Good.
I'd like, hopefully we'll be faster than this one. Excuse me. Bonnie, we have like, oh. Okay. Okay, so we have Jones Meadow special permit, definitive subdivision, senior residential development, special permit, aqua water resource special permit, and inclusionary housing style or affordable unit. So we've sent everything back and forth, we've had town council's chance to review it, we have no outstanding issues with Green, correct?
I think Greg is ready
Yeah.
to give you a quick update.
Okay.
There are a few. We received an updated letter from Green on March 29th, which I think was last week. So we've been working with that. So there's maybe 12 or 15 items that remain in their plan-related things, I should say, in that letter. We have addressed all those. They're pretty minor in nature. We obviously haven't produced a plan set for you, but we would certainly do so and wrap all those into the plans prior to endorsement, prior to doing the Mylar. So we've worked with Green on, the most significant one had to do with the stormwater, the way the basins were designed with emergency overflow. So we've resolved that with them today. The other ones were really just housekeeping. We're happy to go through those if you'd like, but.
No, it's okay.
We would take no exception with you if you felt, if you were inclined to include that, satisfaction of Green's outstanding comments in their March 29th letter in the decision, that would be fine with us.
You've read my mind.
Yeah, I think I was like, anything that we talked about previously as plan modifications to be included in the
Yeah.
decision. Even if they've already started working.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what else is up there? So it's mostly the drainage issue. We figured out the disposition of the field, or
What's that?
I don't think they've heard that update yet.
Oh, they haven't?
so, no.
Oh, okay. I met with Rick Finley, Don MacGyver, and Jim O'Neill from the Conservation Trust. in regards to the parking area on the spec pond.
Could you do, some people in the back are just doing this, so if you could speak a little louder, just repeat yourself.
Sure. Met with the Conservation Trust as far as the parking area being located to Spectacle Pond Road. Which was Don MacGyver, Rick Finley, and
Jim O'Neill?
Jim O'Neill. Thank you. And they were very receptive to, to adding that parking area to that side of the street. As far as the design went, I went over that with Chris Stoddard, and he actually put it together for Greg to put onto the plan. And they're in agreement with that. Oops. And also the open space number 1. They'd be willing to accept that as well. I also talked to Danny Pickard about mowing it. He was receptive to that. So that's pretty much it.
So most of it agrees to design issues with the HDP pipe and storage of the material on site while in construction, storing it back to its natural state. I don't see anything that, in the green, the outstanding issues like with green that can't be resolved.
Are we talking about the?
No,
Like
I
green
can bring it
stuff.
downstairs.
Most of like, do they want to use HDP piping, which is fine, we're starting to let everybody in town use that. Stockpile, back in its natural state after the fire, so stuff like that, it's all pretty much fine, so it's housekeeping stuff.
I just had a question, I can't remember if it was, this is the one that just came out, oh no, this is the paper, or this is,
That's me.
revised, okay. Oh, yeah, I guess. Is it, I had a question about, what the, I guess, historical, I don't know, the history that you guys have done in the past, but, is it typical to allow for easements on open space to store soils and construction materials?
Until they turn it over to the town, sure.
I'm just wondering, because if the town intends to use this in the future for agricultural purposes, if we want to maybe talk about setting a bit of a limit, and, you know, what type of materials are they storing there? Like, I just don't know if that's a question that's ever been brought up before. I mean, I'm sure some things, you don't care if it's just timber, or what, you know what I mean, if it's just 2x4s
So it's gonna be
versus.
mostly soil.
It would be
Soil,
soil.
yeah.
It'd be
Just the
the
leftover
topsoil strip, I think. when
Okay.
And we have defined that area on the plan. We do show that on the erosion control plan, I think, is where we have the stockpile area, so we do limit it. in,
I missed that,
either-
thank you.
Yeah.
And I did mention that to the Conservation Trust, and they were okay.
Okay. And do you have anything else?
I don't, Dr. Green. No.
Okay, you good with green? Are you good with green? Peter? Do you have any other comments or concerns before we move forward?
Hi. So regarding the plan, I know it's very tiny to see, and in the application, we talk about a zero clearance entrance,
Right.
but each of these shows steps on the front, and then if you look at the interior, all but one of them also show steps from the garage into the house. So I was wondering where the zero
Yeah,
clearance.
the zero-step entrance will be under the porches to the front door, from the driveway over. And they'll be protected from the weather that way.
I see what you're saying, yeah, you're referring to the front elevations that show the
Right,
stairs.
exactly.
All the renderings are
So they
Oh,
show
yeah.
what looks like steps.
Yeah, we wouldn't be doing that, we'd be coming right flush up to the door, I mean,
These are just typical, I mean, we can just
Yeah.
condition that, because I mean, it is a requirement, I think zero-step entry means your entry.
So I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that
sorry
we're
for
all
the
on the same
confusion,
page
yeah.
with the zero
Thank you.
Yep.
Anna.
clearance.
Yeah, happy to make that clear in a condition.
That would be good.
Anything else?
Okay, and then I'd ask ask the same policy question on the donation for affordable housing. Worded the same as the last one, so to the town for affordable housing.
Excuse me.
So are we going to talk about the decision going into that?
You would, that's where you never thought, you were going to receive it without the decision.
I was just gonna suggest, and I think I said to Maureen, just to include in the findings that, you know, the applicant presented a proposal to offer the deed restriction, and then also to mention in the findings that the applicant offered to make that donation to the town for affordable unit purposes in the future.
Good?
So regarding the decision, there were a couple of items that are listed as waivers that we had not previously discussed, so I wanted to bring them up and make sure that. Okay, so in the decision, it would be under subdivision waivers approved, item number 2, 249-32D. The definitive plan, a waiver to prepare the plans at a scale. And then the other one is 249-32D2, a waiver of the requirement of providing a profile and cross-section of Spectacle Pond Road at the proposed intersection. So those are 2 waivers that we had not previously discussed, but they're on here.
Well, I think the one that says Green picked up on
Right.
Who did, I'm sorry?
them. Green did.
Green
He
did?
brought them up
Yeah,
on
for the
the
reason.
side.
And I think in that last memo, did he reference the DPW director's comments on it? Am I thinking of the other one? Hold on, let me.
We can do the subject, we can do the correlated subject to, engineer.
Yeah, I think the only one I would be, I just, about the cross-section. I don't think, it doesn't matter to me what scale it's in,
Yeah.
but I think I just,
Yeah, I'm happy to check with Chris if he needs an extra cross-section
Yeah, that's fine.
for construction
Subject
control.
yeah, it might be helpful for him in the future, but I don't know if he really cared.
I'll
If he
check.
needs it, we'll put it in if he doesn't.
And then that way, if it's required prior to endorsement, just add that to the plan.
And then, in terms of the donation of the $3,000 per market unit as well.
We already spoke about it, yeah.
Okay, yes, it wasn't in the
Donation of how
decision
much?
that we had, so.
What was the donation?
3,000.
Market.
Yeah.
And then I think in the plan modifications, just to be consistent with the previous permit, since we're moving forward with the senior residence, is to make sure that, you know, it includes that the units be indistinguishable and that they be dispersed throughout the site.
That's in the bylaw itself.
Yeah, I think we just need to make sure that that's the case, just to make sure that they're not next to each other or in the same location in the lot, that they are actually, you know, dispersed in the site, so someone
Lots
driving.
1 and 19.
I'm sorry?
Lots 1 and 19.
So, we wanna make sure if someone's driving by, they're not, like, those are the affordables, you know, we wanna,
So that they're dispersed.
yeah, disperse.
That's, and what we did is we looked at the language right out of the bylaw and put it in the, as a condition of approval.
Anything else in that?
Future building permits and sheds addressed.
Yeah. This one's a little different, this has individual lots. It's a lot bigger, I think we should allow bigger home who wants a shed.
Well, with what setback? As an open space
Yeah.
design, was it?
Yeah, I would wanna say, you know, 10 feet from the open space setback
A
boundary.
lot of them don't even go near open space, so 10 feet from the lot line.
10 feet from the lot line or open space.
That's the typical zoning for a shed, is 10 feet from the lot.
It's all the typical
Or would you wanna have something
permitting
later?
process that is allowed now for any other property for the shed, so if it be 10 feet, then it'd be 10 feet.
Right.
Can't be located in front of the front of the house, correct?
Correct.
There's no room to put it up there anyways. So that should satisfy that.
Yeah, when we established, I think, the modified 7, on page 7, we established the modified setbacks. So I think that covers you. You know, I think that would cover accessory structures too, unless there's a provision in the zoning bylaw that would allow you to put it closer, but I think that would cover you.
I mean, do you want to set any type of precedence for like a greater setback from open space?
No,
Or do
no,
you
I
not?
think the 10, I want to be consistent, I think that's
10's good.
I wanted to be documented.
And there's only a couple of them that really, 1, 2, 3, 4, well, maybe 10 lots of it. Packable rental space, so let me just leave it at 10. Okay.
What about additional building permits inside the dwelling for expanded finished space?
Aren't we capping it at 1,800?
And just have it in these full height basements?
Is that
Are these full height basements?
Well, it'll be a 7-foot 11 wall. For the full height. yeah.
So 1 inch below 8.
I don't think we I don't think we really should be doing it. It's an 1,800 square foot, that's what we're permitting.
What does our bylaw say for, it references,
It's not called habitable space without the proper window egress, correct?
Well, there's a bulkhead on each house too, right?
There is, yes.
So if they were,
The detached one-family dwelling that does not exceed 1,800 square feet of livable floor area, parentheses, meeting the heated floor area of the building above the finished grade, excluding non-dwelling areas such as attics, space, or a garage.
And the wording on the condition for the other one was no building permit shall issue for expansion of any unit beyond what's allowed under the bylaw.
The
So
1,800.
they're at 1,800, they're at 1,800. Okay. Anything else?
So I just have one minor question. On the construction management traffic plan, there were hours in there for night work, and I was just wondering what kind of night work might be required that,
It was to cover us in case we're not gonna have to do it there. If, sometimes when you do the tie-ins in the road, the DPW or requires you to do it at night. I know they're going to on fields, for example, the water department, but I don't think we're gonna have that here, so it's sort of a catch-all. I don't see any night work. It's just not a busy enough road to warrant that.
And the water line's on our side of the street as well.
Anything else? Peter, do you have anything else?
No.
I had one last comment, and I think this is kind of a policy decision on, obviously I'm not gonna be here in the next, one more meeting, but on how you wanna move forward with special permits and subdivisions, but I would strongly encourage the board to require moving forward sidewalks along the frontage of properties. So within the subdivision, but also along the frontage of the property, so that over time you can build sidewalks and connect them.
What we used to do in the past was, we collected, if the sidewalk didn't make any sense to be there because it was the only piece,
Yeah.
we would collect a fee for that, and we had a sidewalk fund
Mhm.
in the old days, and we would put it to the
Yeah.
sidewalk fund.
And that may make sense in certain areas
Maybe
too.
we should continue doing
But
that, you're right.
I think it would be a good idea.
back when he first got on, it was called the cart and buggy fund.
No. Nobody had cars, we couldn't afford cars. We shared cars. Thank you.
They don't have one car, and they all share.
Yeah. Right. And now, anything else? Are we ready to close this? I mean, to vote this?
And all contingent on final wording in town council?
Final approval by town council, which we are sure that'll be fantastic as always. Are you guys all good with that?
Yes.
Make a motion to accept it as it's drawn, final council decision by town council.
Pending final word is by town council.
Second.
Good with that, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Wonderful, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the time.
Thank you, good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we have a 7:45 public hearing. No, 7:45 is postponed. We have the 8:15, where it's probably
On the Point Hotel, we have the official request to withdraw without prejudice. So we need to vote to allow them to withdraw.
The hotel being opposed to the point,
I was asking to withdraw at this time
make a motion to allow them to withdraw
without prejudice.
without prejudice.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
8:15, public hearing, zoning bylaw amendment. So this is the new maps for the, Airport Water Resource District maps for town meeting, correct? Do we have an issue? Anybody in the audience want to talk about it?
Corey's here to talk about it.
Oh, do you need to? I don't need to. That's fine. That's what it was time for.
Prior to this, they got dismissed or delayed, the 740?
They requested to withdraw without prejudice. They're not prepared to move forward with it at this time, so they withdraw the application as of this evening.
Okay. Thank
That's
you.
one for the hotel, is that what you're?
Yes, it is. So, okay, that will give us time, then we'll present something to you in writing concerning where we're at, when that comes about, so you guys prepare.
They've decided not to move forward, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so this is getting, we're prepared for April town, May town meeting. Right. And we present the revised maps. The areas, spheres of influence, so we're, okay. Hasn't changed from the last time we saw it, right?
Right, we came in February, showed you some different maps.
So anyway, do you want to open the hearing with the reading of the notice, or are you
Sure.
going to waive that?
I'm trying to expedite things, Mine.
Yeah, I know, but this isn't
You know, I've been
zoning,
here
but
too
you got.
long, it's time, you know, I gotta,
Yeah, it's processing.
you guys don't pay enough for this. Who's reading it, Anna, right?
Yep.
She'll
You
read
can
that.
read it if you'd like.
Why didn't she have it right there in front of us so we could
Because I'm
move?
slow.
I just wanted to have.
Well, I always prefer to get the official one from Maren, so I read the official one. Public hearing zoning bylaw amendment. The Town of Littleton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, April 4th, 2019, at 8 p.m. in room 103 of the Shattuck Street Town Offices, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Mass., to consider a zoning bylaw amendment as described below, sponsored by the Planning Board and Board of Water Commissioners, according to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 5, Aquifer and Water Resource District Bylaw Amendment. This proposed zoning bylaw amendment would modify Article XIV, the Aquifer and Water Resource District section of the zoning bylaw, by further defining allowed activities within the districts and to update the extent of the Aquifer District to include additional areas near Littleton Common, all as set forth in detail in the bylaw and map.
Okay. So again, it's the maps that showed us, you want to put them up there in case somebody has to see them.
Right, sure.
Just,
Yeah, John Weinberg, that's the slide there.
we have 37 people, we just never seen it. There it is.
That's the new map, it's just slightly expanded the orange area of the Aquifer Protection District because of the increased withdrawal of the Beaver Brook wells. And so approval of this zoning bylaw amendment is required for us to be able to pump those wells at that higher rate by DEP. So we're just looking for the board's approval and support for this town meeting.
So this has to go to town meeting.
It does, this has to be approved at town meeting, along with those minor text changes to the bylaw.
Anybody in the audience have any questions? We've seen this, oh, they're all glazed over too.
Under the circumstances.
We did get one comment. How do you support respectfully, and then they signed it. That comment.
That's it? Okay. We didn't have, we were okay with it before.
So again, under the circumstances, if we are all fine with the amendments that you're proposing, then I suggest we approve it and be done with it.
Good.
Make a motion to support town meeting.
To recommend to town meeting.
Back around to town meeting, yeah, that's all. Anyone want to second?
Second.
Perfect. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
How was that?
Excellent, thank you.
Anything else?
No, we're done, let's go home.
Did I hear that you closed the hearing?
Yeah, we closed it, right before I heard the ayes. Okay, so we have an 8:30. Well, look at that, we're right on time. Amazing. Continue public hearing, Wickham, you might want to stay sitting in the hot seat. Wickham Ave, water treatment plan, 76 Wickham Ave. Okay, so when last we met, we were gonna take a look at maybe doing a little more screening, maybe buffer it a little more from the residents.
Yep.
And I suggest you make it look like a barn, but I know you didn't listen to me. Okay, so,
Yeah, I'll show you the changes we did make, though.
Okay,
So just a quick background, we had a pre-permitting abutters meeting back
oh,
in
before
February.
we get there, the legal question, so we get past the legal
Oh,
question.
sure.
The legal question was whether or not we can do this on this land. We have town council, the town council was the deed and everything else, and we're fine with putting this facility on this property, correct?
We are, yes, we are.
Okay, so we had that issue and that's been resolved.
Right, yeah, and a memo was provided by town council to that effect, yeah.
Just one for the residents that are out there, okay?
Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt, go
No,
ahead.
that's okay, that's okay. So we'll just quickly through the background there, we had that pre-permitting abutters meeting, got some input. We had a Conservation Commission hearing back in February as well, the initial Planning Board hearing last month, and then shortly after that, we had the continued Conservation Commission hearing where they approved the project, gave us the order of conditions. We held a second abutters meeting as was requested at the last Planning Board hearing. And then we're here tonight for the continued hearing. So there's a handful of property owners that have submitted letters or expressed opposition to the project, and we've met with most of them at these abutters meetings and also heard their concerns here last month. If you don't mind going to the next slide, I'll show you some of the changes we made. First one we just covered. Town council provided a memo describing their legal opinion on whether or not we can site the facility there. We also discussed the Taylor Street parcel with Mr. Skinner. He was the man that was sitting over here last time and suggested that we speak with him about his property. But that property is far too narrow to fit our facility on it, especially with the setbacks. There's just no way to fit it in there, so that was a no-go there. The board had asked last time that we confirm that we would restore the well site sort of simultaneously with construction of the water treatment plant, and that won't be a problem for us, within that same 18-month window. It was requested by one of the abutters to the west there to shift the facility more towards Taylor Street in order to provide additional buffer area and landscaping between our property and theirs. Theirs is zoned residential, whereas the Taylor Street parcels are zoned industrial. So we did that. We did a little bit of a compromise that I can show you on the plan there so as not to impact other abutters too much. And we held an additional abutters meeting to discuss more layout and landscaping. So I think the next three slides show our original plan, the first revision, which we had shown you at the last meeting, where we had added bushes around the drying beds to the north there, and a couple more trees to the south. Now, if you go to the next slide, please, you can see we had significantly more landscaping now. There's trees along the west, the south, the north, trying to provide as much screening as possible. We also shifted the entire facility 15 feet to the northwest to provide that additional buffer between us and the property to the west there. And another piece that we're doing is where the driveway is going to be, where the entrance will be, where there's a stone wall there. So we'll move that stone wall over to the corner at the VFW there, just to preserve that character. So those are the major changes we made to the plan. And I think we've addressed all of the other concerns that were brought up at the last hearing, the last meeting, I should say. And I think there's one or two more slides I can show you. We had some renderings, some basic renderings of the building done. So that's the side that will be facing Whitcomb Ave. Gives you a sense for what it might look like. It'll be sort of a brick red color, what we call the split face block. It'll have those shakes, up on the sort of northwest and southwest sides. And then if you go to the next slide, it shows the other side of the building. That's the side that's more facing towards the Sanderson Road side.
So is it clapboard or is it shake in the gable end?
I think it's vinyl shake, yeah.
Vinyl or cement.
What's that?
Vinyl or cement, something like that.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
The cement ones look like crap.
Oh, yeah. So, okay. We'll keep that in mind.
Vinyl's not much better.
There's some new ones out there
Vinyl.
look pretty nice, but
Anyway,
the
okay.
concrete ones
So
are
the
junk.
board have any questions?
Open it up to the public.
Well, let's talk about it first and then open up to the public. I mean, I like the added screening. I think you listen to everybody and did add a lot of screening to it to try to minimize the impact it's gonna have on the neighbors. Shifted it forward too. And the beds, you really wouldn't see them.
Not unless you were up on like the second story of a building, you might, if you're looking down.
Do you have any questions or concerns?
Nope, I'm hunky-dory.
Ed?
No, I'm in favor of the project. I'm more excited not necessarily to see what's happening here, but to actually see what's gonna happen at the old site with the restoration of the old property back to
Right.
what it should be in the floodplain. So get rid of that stuff is what I'm more excited about.
Yep, no, we're excited about that too.
I agree. You had to abandon it because of the issues that were involved over there, so it'd be nice to get that all taken care of as well. Anna?
Well, I have a question for clarification. Under the special permit for aquifer, 173-62B, so my question to you guys is, in the drying beds, can you please refresh my memory as to what's going to be in the drying beds?
Yeah, so when the water's treated, what we're filtering out primarily is iron and manganese, which are just naturally occurring in the groundwater. So after you run water through the filters for a certain period of time, there's residual iron and manganese left over that you need to dispose of, basically. But if you let it dry in the drying beds first, the weight is significantly less to have it hauled away. So that's what those are for.
Okay.
These beds don't filter back into down into the aquifer.
Oh, they do, yeah, the water filters down into the aquifer.
It captures iron and manganese to be hauled away.
That's where the iron and manganese came from to begin with.
Yeah, but we're filtering it out and you're putting it back.
Well, it's solid, so it stays on top. The water goes back down. So the solids stay on top now. It won't redissolve because the chlorine we add turns it from a dissolved state into a solid state.
I knew that.
Okay. So once it dries, it's solid and pull it out of there.
Well, and that's where my question comes from, because it was actually, my citation should have been 173-62C, where it talks about that there will be no waste generation there. And so that's why I was wondering whether or not that constituted a waste generation and whether or not that would be then a change of use on that particular site.
No, I don't think so. It's not wastewater residuals. It's drinking water treatment residuals. It's
Okay.
different. I think that was intended to capture like wastewater sludge, that sort of thing.
Right. Well, that's why I wanted to make sure what was actually going to be done with the waste material. And so once it's in the drying beds, then it's removed and.
Right. It would dry in a matter of days and then be removed.
Okay.
Chris?
I don't have any other questions at this point. I'm interested to hear if there's any other abutter concerns and how they're.
The article the paper that Myron gave us is actually a copy of the master plan, correct?
Yeah, Kristen had pointed out a couple sections in the master plan that.
Let's talk about this. Improved water quality, provide water treatment facility upgrades, natural resource evaluate, change some natural resources, prepare the,
Well, that's great. I mean, municipal employees have read the master plan and they're following it to a T.
I was
Thank you,
just
that's
shocked.
great.
I was just shocked that Anna didn't pick
It was
up on that.
Kristen.
They're doing it, I just found the section that they're doing.
Perfect.
I just think it would be nice to add as a finding, because I think that's part of our job, is
Okay.
making sure that permits in front of us are being consistent with the master plan.
So the
and-
board's okay right now? Can I open it up to the public?
Please do.
Anyone in the public have any questions or concerns? State your name too for Mark.
Hi, Jonathan Wales, Wickham Avenue. Town council said he reviewed the deed and had no issues with the legality of this. I'm just wondering if he also reviewed, or they had a chance to review the grant. A state grant originally funded the purchase of this property through eminent domain. And that grant was specifically for the protection of the water supply aquifer, not for water development or expansion. So just with potential legal repercussions of using this for building purposes, the grant could be in jeopardy, even though it's, 30-plus years old. So
We've been in communication with the state, and the acquisition of the property was initially funded with grant money from the state. And the town actually took title to the property both for water protection purposes, but also other municipal purposes as well. So it's my understanding that based on our current conversations with the state, that there will need to be some offset provided at some point for the use of this property for this proposed purpose, either in the form of setting aside some other land, some equally sized and reasonably comparable land set aside for Article 97 purposes, or there may need to be some payback to the state at some point. So there will need to be an offset, but the use of this property for this proposed use can go forward.
So
With
if I
the
may-
understanding that we'll need to make amends for that at some point.
So if I may ask, I was gonna say, the restoration of the property, but we're gonna take down the old buildings and restore, is that possible to be used as Article 97?
I don't know if that property would suffice by itself or in combination with other property, but it might, and certainly something we can look at.
Thank you.
I'd like to add a few things to that. So Ed, it's unlikely that that restoration will count. We're hoping it will, but it's unlikely.
Okay.
Because it's already in Zone 1, it's already protected. But the state, both the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs and the Mass DEP are champions of this project. They love the idea of moving across the street, not building in Zone 1. And we've been in constant communications with them since probably September, October.
September, when we first decided to move over there, yes.
So there's no issues there, and there's plenty of ways to resolve that grant application, whether it's financially or through land acquisition or whatever. But they're in support of this project 100%, all the way up to the Secretary of.
Does it have to do with what you create as impervious areas on that property? Is that what you're diminishing the value of the, I'm sorry, show your name again?
Jonathan.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan left out half the story, so that land was for water development and aquifer protection.
Okay, but as far as reimbursement to the state was actually our money that we give to them, that they're just gonna give back to us?
They gave us the money to buy that land.
We gave it to them first. So that's how it works when I say it's tax-free, it's
You give me
no
the
government
next-
money,
you give
no,
me the next
that's
phone
our
call
money.
then.
It's all government money.
All our money is the government's
I mean, I
money.
guess the
So my
point.
question, the final question is if it's under impervious areas of which you cover over, if there's 10 acres and you cover 1 acre, then we only have to reimburse them 1 acre. Is that fair assessment?
That's a possibility, yes.
Okay, is that all right? Does that sound like it's something that we could pursue? Good, thank you, that's all.
Anyone else back there?
So I'd like to just clarify something. So do we have a sense as to how much money we're talking about here?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I mean, this isn't really a planning board issue, but it's probably $445,000 at the highest. But like Peter said, there's ways to proportion that down to, we're developing a very small piece of that property,
What was the purchase price 30 years ago?
$445,000.
Model.
But
Present
we're really
value of
looking
money.
at what's in front of us today, and knowing that legally this can move forward is what, okay.
I'm good.
Anyone else back? You saw you had your hand up.
Yes, Robert Otto, Whitcomb Ave. So, in February, when we learned of the intent for the water department to be building on the field, I did ask formally in an email about consideration of alternative sites beyond the originally proposed Whitcomb Avenue site and the newly proposed field. And I was told, quote, "We are going to continue on this path," unquote, with no information about alternative sites offered. So I'm asking now of the planning board that you delay permitting until alternative sites can be explored. And I will add that if the planning board, for whatever reason, feels they don't have purview over that, that I have been speaking with various town boards regarding alternative site exploration. And given that the town owns the land, and in speaking with the chair of the Board of Selectmen today, I believe we need to engage the Board of Selectmen on the matter, again, if the board feels you do not have purview on that.
First of all, it's water department controlled. It's their land. It was set aside, not necessarily specifically to take manganese and chlorine out of the water, but to do what the water department needs to do to give us safe and potable drinking water. There is no other place to really put it other than try to renovate where it is, it's zone one, which doesn't make sense since you're in violation of zone one, so. With respect to what you're asking, you can take it up with the selectmen, but it's really not the selectmen. The water department is
And it's ours for the permit.
entity of their own, they're governors and boards, they work exclusively outside the town. They're a private entity, I guess is the best way to put it, correct?
Well, a municipal
Municipal.
department, but yeah, we have our own governing board. But in response to that, we've been talking to the Board of Selectmen since March of last year about this project. So, again, the Board of Selectmen, I believe, were in 100% support of this project.
I was just gonna
No, I
ask.
don't want to put them on the hot seat, that's not fair.
That's okay, actually, I appreciate that. Cindy Napoli, Board of Selectmen. I actually did have a question for the commissioners. What if this project doesn't go through? What's the consequence or result? What's the impact on the community if this well is?
So, so half our water comes from this plant, so half our water will be continued to be unfiltered. And I believe that's a reoccurring issue for a lot of residents in this town. They've been I've been here for almost 20 years, and been hearing about the water quality in that area of the town as being poor and wanting us to address it. But the other part of the issue is, part of this project is increasing the capacity from those wells to what's permitted at those wells. And we have a lot of growth in town, between Patriot and residential. Residential growth is growing 25% in 20 years. We need this water. I mean, there's going to be significant impact residentially, commercially, growth-wise, if we don't improve those wells.
Thank you.
So it's both those reasons.
Yes,
And Neil Peterson, 119 Whipkin. So to answer your question, we've been buying water for 5 years because we can't drink it.
Okay.
So my wife's got pictures, the water's brown, everything molds in the house after a couple days. So we highly ask you to approve this tonight.
Thank you.
We can't wait another year or 6
Yes,
months.
sir, in the back again.
Yes, so, again, Robert Otto, Whitcomb Ave. Just two pieces there. As far as the well improvements, there's really two separate projects, and the water department sometimes presents them as discrete projects and sometimes presents them together. The piece that the Conservation Commission's been concerned with, and indeed has improved, is the well modernization improvements, the new wells that are in the wetland protection zone. And that will allow us to get additional water volume. The water treatment plant is a separate piece. It does address some of those issues that they were talking about. And again, I do hear that there are people in town who have water quality issues. I know as somebody on Whitcomb who's literally right next to these wells, I do not have those issues, but I do know that some people have on occasion addressed those concerns, spoken to those issues, and I am not against the water treatment plant per se, just very concerned about the current siting of the plant.
Right, I get that. Anyone else in the audience? Lady way in the back, then I'll get you in the front.
Joni Coleman, Whitcomb Ave. I just wanted to clarify something. You had made the assumption that because the water department owned that property, that they therefore could do what they wanted with it. As all of us own our land, we can't also do whatever it is we want. There are certain guidelines and restrictions they have, and that's why they would have to repay the grant, is because they're violating the restrictions put on that property for aquifer protection at the time that the state gave the grant. So they're not free to do whatever they would like to do.
With all due respect, if they need to upgrade the facility to get manganese out of the water, and chlorine out of the water, and whatever,
Chlorine.
arsenic and everything else out of the water, I think that's well within their purview as the water department to do that.
Mr. Chairman, it's not a violation. Condition 9 of the grant actually gives us the right to repay that grant for water purposes. It's actually in the grant application, allowed use, so violation's a strong word.
And I'm wondering if maybe town council, I don't know if it matters to you, but to explain a little bit about what Article 97 is and why, because the funds were used to purchase the, I don't know if that would help clarify or if that's just getting into the weeds, but just to kind of put into ease that it's not really a violation, but it's a step that you have to take if you're going to use land that was purchased in a certain way.
If land is taken or purchased for Article 97 purposes, which is recreation and open space, it is typically set aside for those purposes for forever. Sometimes if you want to take land out, you can do that. You just need to set aside a comparable amount of land elsewhere to offset what you've taken out of what's considered Article 97 land. But I think for present purposes, the key here is that, you're a zoning permitting board, and, you're in charge with administering the zoning bylaw. The Article 97 grant issue is one that, the water department has been working on in good faith, and we'll iron out with the state. I think that's there's nothing about that part of it that precludes you from issuing a permit that otherwise complies with the zoning bylaw.
Thank you. Ma'am, right there, I have a question.
Hi, my name's Amy Tez. I live at 117 Whitcomb Ave. I just want to express first and foremost our support for this project because our water quality is really concerning. We have 3 small kids. Oftentimes I fill the tub up and it's yellow tinge, brown water. When we flush the sewer flushing, we get brown, black sediment in our water. There's pink residue all over our plumbing fixtures. So we are concerned about that. And I understand the abutters' concerns because our neighborhood's gone through some flux and some change with the new neighborhood that's been built. And we are concerned about the aesthetic, but we really want our water quality to be really good and to be something that we feel comfortable with.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion.
Close
Well,
the
one, we have to
hearing.
close the hearing. Can we do that?
Sure.
Make a motion to close the hearing,
One
please.
question?
Mike, can you ask one final question?
It's a clarifying question more than anything else. So if we're going to be able to get land somewhere else, or have to pay for that, so how does that process work? Who does that go through?
Well, in fairness, maybe they don't really record the area where we're talking, where the wells are, there was a donation attached to that years ago. The Mr. Jackson developed up off of Wickham Ave. He donated like 5 acres to that parcel, and it's just been sitting, it's just was donated. No one, the water department hasn't done anything. It's uplands land, it could probably be used, I'm not saying, you should at least look into it. It's just sitting there attached to your area now, and it was donated when they built the house, a couple of houses up off of Wickham Ave. The rest of the land was donated, so it's something you might want to look at it, but it's probably a trade or a transfer or something like that to make it work. But that's there.
Yeah, it's a water
Yeah,
commissioner's
right,
issue.
Right, no, I totally understand that. I just wanted to know what
Yeah,
the
just, I
process
mean,
was.
so you feel good about, we've already had several conversations with several landowners, and there's plenty of opportunities to acquire land of equal value, maybe even better, for water and aquifer protection.
Well, and the reason why I bring it up is having the master plan and seeing the green spots, we want to maintain as many of those open green spaces obviously as possible. So if we're moving it from point A to point B, I just wanted to know how we go about doing that.
Yep.
And I think Cindy had her hand up.
Yeah, no, I just know, just speaking as a member of the Board of Selectmen, this project has been presented to us continually now for a year. The Board of Selectmen we've never had any questions or reservations about the project itself, and there was never really any discussions of, could you maybe find another spot? We fully support and trust the judgment of the project that's been presented before us.
No, I think we're gonna vote it. Peter, you wanna make that motion to?
I'm not sure. Is that okay with you now?
I just wanted to make sure everybody on the board was cool, all right? Are you cool?
I'll second Peter's motion.
All right.
Close the hearing.
Okay. Do you wanna vote on this? Do we have any issues, any conditions?
I'd like to make a motion
Go ahead.
to accept the proposal before us.
Hold on, you just asked if there's any conditions, so I think, would it be appropriate just to make sure that if there were to be any reason that there isn't an agreement with the state that everything happens, then that would be the only condition, so that's it.
I wouldn't support that.
No, I think, go ahead.
I would suggest that those are, any obligations the town is under to the state are state-level obligations that the town absolutely needs to figure out, but those are not those are not
Conditions of our approval.
enforceable by you or the building commissioner or the town.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we approve the plans as presented to us with the enhanced grading package, the setbacks of the buildings, the screening of the drying fields, drying pits, or whatever you want to call them, and continue to work with the neighbors to try to, even if you have to still keep tweaking it to get everybody as comfortable as they can with the situation. Do we want to vote that?
Second.
There are, Cory and I have reviewed, and Nick have reviewed draft decision. Yeah, the only other finding would be reference to the master plan.
I would like, yeah, I'd like to include that in.
Okay.
And then also just change my name to Kristen with an E instead of an I.
Absolutely.
I didn't notice that
Also
before.
approval of the town council.
Final wording. of town council.
Final word of town, okay.
Second.
Second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That's it.
My mom asked me what time I'd be home, and I said 11:30 probably.
Thought you guys might help me get another pen.
You should have said no.
Motion to adjourn?
So, second.
Nice to meet you.
Aye, sorry.
Saturday.
Aye.
You want to tavern for one?